All right, I think we are live.
Well,
Yep, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode. Oh no! Are you hearing that as well?
hearing what?
Yeah, that's me. No,
Yeah.
never mind. Sorry, screwed that up. Okay, the start of the stream script. I didn't have one of the channels muted, so I could hear
Oh.
myself. That was really annoying. I'm very sorry about that, everybody. We'll get that right in editing. Anyway, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of History's Greatest Idiots, the podcast in which we look back through the annals of history, not the annals of history, and discover the biggest mistakes in human history and teach you lessons so that you never repeat those mistakes again. But who are we kidding? We're humans. We love making mistakes. Kind of how we learn, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just like that, like me not muting my audio properly. Joining me as ever is my awesome co-host Derrick. Derrick, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Been a
Yeah,
been
you
a
had
nice week.
yeah, man. It's getting to that season where like it's nice, it's getting cooler. We don't really have, like, you guys have fall, right? So it's the whole
Not here.
season. No. I imagine actually in Arizona it's similar to the UK in that it's like you go from one season into another unless it's like constantly burning hot hell down there. So we go from summer to darkness. Basically, it's like the day and night cycle in a rainforest. Like you don't get a transition. You just go to screeching cold, cloud cover, freezing rain, dogs that don't want to go for a walk, all of that shit. That's
Sounds
basically.
amazing.
I guess to someone who lives in Arizona the majority of the time, it probably is amazing. So yeah, how has the weather been over there? Is it kind of mad, or are you guys kind of cooling off a little bit?
Oh, it's cooled off. It's been amazing. It went from a hot, horrible, burning season to just pretty decent season, which is what it
Nice.
does.
Yeah, that's yeah, we've gone to cold already, so thankfully I now have new radiators in my house, and triple glazed windows are on their way, so I'm going to be snug as a bug in a rug
There you
soon.
go.
Yeah, it's upgrade all around my house. Anyway, away from the weather, because I'm British. We always talk about the weather. Derrick, can you tell me? And I don't know anything. This is the first time I've gone into this completely blind. Can you tell me who your idiot this episode is, please?
I have a gentleman that I present to you today that
Mm.
led an extraordinarily normal and mostly uneventful life, save for two little things that he did that put him on my radar.
Okay, I'm
He's
interested now.
a German chemist by the name of Albert Niemann.
All right.
And it's not what you think. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
maybe,
you knew
maybe a
where my
little.
mind was. Maybe a little bit. Yeah, you knew when my mind was going there. To be honest, so yeah. Please carry on. Tell me about Albert Niemann. Is it Albert?
Yes, Albert Niemann, and he was born on May 20th, 1834 in Goslar, which
Oh, okay.
is it was in the Kingdom of Hanover at the time.
Okay.
He was the child of a school principal, and like I said before, lived a pretty much just standard life of children and people at the time. Um,
Right.
it was in 1849 that he started to get a little bit more interesting, and he began his apprenticeship at the town hall pharmacy in Göttingen,
Okay.
where it would lead him to his PhD in chemistry at George August University.
Nice. Okay.
So around this time when he's getting his PhD, it's the what is it? Early it's 19th century European sometime
Okay.
era.
Yeah.
And chemists at the time are really interested in the effects of the coca leaves that have been discovered in Latin America and brought back over.
Okay.
So in 1855, the chemist Frederick Guthrie, I think, I don't know,
Okay.
published a paper on the research of the active alkaloid extract from the cocoa leaves called erythroxylene,
Okay. Right.
because the alkaloids are all enes. Anyway,
Yeah, of course. Yes.
the discovery led to Niemann's doctoral advisor Friedrich Wohler to have some coca leaves imported to Germany through Karl von Scherzer, who was a member of the Austrian Novara expedition,
Okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and that gave him access to the leaves to bring them back. So he gets those leaves, brings them back to Niemann, and they begin to analyze them. So
Yeah.
in 1859, Niemann isolates cocaine from the coca leaves and names it cocaine, or cocaine, because the
Mm,
enes in the alkaloid.
of course.
He extracted the primary alkaloid ingredient and named it, like I said. And then he wrote about him, saying that the colorless transparent prisms have an alkaline reaction and a bitter taste that promote the flow of saliva and leave a peculiar numbness following by a sense of cold when applied to the tongue.
Right. Okay. What about
Now,
when you rub it into your gums,
yeah, same
mate?
thing. Yeah, he's the first one to test cocaine.
They feel numb, but fucking amazing. Oh
So
my god.
he published his findings in 1860 in his dissertation that earned him his PhD. And in 1860, he was published in the journal Archive de Pharmazine. I think
Okay.
I don't know, man. It's, me
Was
and foreign words.
Can I just ask, was he the only person in history to finish a dissertation on cocaine rather than doing cocaine to finish a dissertation?
He was the OG, yes. Yeah, he did it the wrong way first. Oh, well, maybe the right way, I guess.
Well, yeah, hopefully, yeah.
So the dude invented cocaine, sorta, because some other dude at the same time named Paolo Mantegazzi.
Well,
I
that's
don't,
a
man.
lot,
It's
a
Italian.
lot going on in that name. Yeah.
He synthesized it around the same time in Italy,
Okay.
like within reasonable, like it
Yeah.
just they both kind of happened
That
anyway.
happened a lot, like around about the 19th and early 20th century. There were a lot of people kind of creating, inventing, and synthesizing the same things. So, like you ask people who invented the telephone, you're going to get like 3 or 4 different answers. Who invented the television, and there's so many different people that get credited that it really was just a race to the patents office at that point. Just like who gets credit is the first person through the door, and like, yeah, it was me. It was me. So
Right?
uh,
And that's
basically,
what he
that's it.
did. He took some of his products and boom, came flying through the door.
Here, powder, sniff it.
Anyway, so he invented cocaine as we know it today, and then he decides to go on to other chemist work, as one does when they're a chemist.
Yeah,
And
meth.
in
Yeah,
Yeah, he did not invent blue meth. That's not what comes next. But it does start with an M, and here we go.
oh,
In 1860, Niemann was experimenting with ethylene and sulfur chloride or dichloride,
okay.
which produced mustard gas.
Oh shit!
Yeah, that's right. The two things this guy is known for is being the inventor of cocaine and sort of accidentally finding mustard gas. Not
How did he?
exactly,
Sorry, go on, carry on.
I was gonna say it's not exactly the same sort of hot party
N-
drug that he was
no,
hoping
that you don't
for,
want to
but
get those two mixed up. Really, you don't
no.
want to. The businessmen in the '80s were probably not doing lines of mustard gas before they played squash at 9 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was. But yeah, that's a hell of a party mistake. Oh no! Instead of sending the mustard gas to, you know, um, independent warriors or assassins all over the world, we've accidentally sent them cocaine and we've sent the mustard gas to a party. That would be
Oh,
kind of disastrous. Whoops! My
both
God,
both on
mustard
both
gas.
fronts.
Yeah. Holy shit. Um, they're launching vials of cocaine at their opponents in the air. It's like, oh, thanks. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
My God.
So, he wasn't exactly the first or the only one on cocaine or the first or the only one on mustard gas, but he was one of the first to document the gas's toxic effects. So let's see. There's another one. It's another Frederick. Frederick Guthrie was working on the same chemicals at the same time and reported the same reaction. But I wanted to give Albert some credit because he is possibly one of the inventors. He was at least among the people working on it at the time that came out with the results. So he described these properties of the gas saying, quote, "It consists in a fact that even the slightest trace, which happens to be on any part of the skin, does not initially cause scarring, but after a few hours it causes reddening of the skin, followed by a day it produces burn blisters, which fester for a very long time and are extremely and extraordinarily difficult to heal, leaving severe scars."
They really are.
I believe he might have tested that on himself.
Sounds like it, yeah. And that was going to be one of my questions. Like, how do you? Because a lot of scientists, like, I mean, if you look at Marie Curie, one of the reasons she died the way she did was because she was like, "Oh, look, radium, woo, rub it on my face, yay." There's like a lot of scientists, like they're so proud of what they've done that sometimes safety measures go out of the window. So I was going to say, I really hope this guy was observing proper laboratory etiquette when he's fucking around with mustard gas for the first time. You would hope so. It's like, oh, what's in the air? Oh God, is someone cooking something nice? Oh shit, my skin. It's not a good start for your day, really.
Dude,
wow.
Horrible stuff, and nothing like cocaine. And it went on to be used as a horrible weapon of war, with the first large-scale use of the lethal poisonous gas being used on the battlefield by the Germans on the 22nd of April in 1915.
Yeah.
Perhaps, fortunately, Neiman would not live to see the brutal use of his invention, because he died on January 19th, 1861. Reportedly from suppuration of the lung, and it's widely believed that his exposure to mustard gas through his working with it probably resulted in his end.
Yeah, there you go. That was coming, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, so kind of a short one that ends the spectacular, pretty short life, which was just 26 years is all he lived.
Another year, he could have joined the 27 Club with like Amy Winehouse and Kurt Cobain and that lot, rock stars that died too early.
Dude, I wonder if he put something in the cocaine that. Never mind.
That's what it is, like a time release thing.
Yeah.
He was like, I want other young people to join me in death. So he's like laced cocaine and all the musicians' drugs. Wow. So he lived it's kind of a weird balance, that, because like you say, he only lived to 26, right?
Yeah.
But in that time, he essentially invented cocaine.
Which is good and bad.
Which is good and bad. It was used as a sedative very early on in medicine. It was one of the first ways of sedating a patient that wasn't getting them pissed or knocking them out, like physically knocking them out. So there's that aspect of it. Obviously, we wouldn't have Coca-Cola without this man either, because that was a key ingredient in the early days of Coca-Cola.
And it was an early local anesthetic too. That led to different enes, like Novocaine type of thing.
Morphine stuff. We're talking about an incredibly important medical thing, which unfortunately has seen far more use outside of the medical field than it has within it, and unfortunately has become something of a really dangerous drug. I mean, cocaine, people say, oh, people don't die from cocaine use. They do. There are plenty of people that die from cocaine use, and they certainly fuck up their lives. But yeah, the other one, the mustard gas one, I guess it's kind of the legacy of like Nobel, who, is like, oh, I'm going to invent something so amazing, so deadly that no one will ever create anything worse again. It's like, actually, dude, you had no idea, A, what you were doing, and B, how much more people would be like, oh, yeah, I'll fucking have that bet, you arsehole. So, yeah, I can't... See, it's difficult because this isn't like a Thomas Midgley situation where he like knew the dangers of it and kind of carried on letting people use his world-ending poisons for decades so that he could make as much money as possible. That's the Thomas Midgley story. This
Right.
guy was a scientist at his core, a chemist, and he invented two amazing things that he never really got a chance to fully see come to like proper use. So I
Right.
can't give him a massive score. However, the dude invented mustard gas, which was the forerunner to nerve gas and all the other like chemical and biological weapons that we have to this very day. Although, biological warfare goes back to the days when people were launching like disease-ridden people over castle walls and shit like that to try and infect
Right.
towns and that. So I am going to say, for the fact that he was a very good scientist and died so young, he achieved so much in his life. So immediately that's like right up there. 26, invented two incredibly important things, good or bad, but also the use that they've gone on to have. You kind
Yeah.
of have to put him reasonably high for that because of the amount of deaths. So I'm going to say 80 for this guy.
That's fair.
Um,
Yeah.
I feel like 80 is good because, a hard worker, a good scientist, invented so many things in a short time at a time when it was, lab experiments were incredibly dangerous things.
Oh yeah.
There's no two ways about it. Like if you were fucking around with chemicals in the 19th century, there was a fair chance you were going to die. So
Right. They
fair
didn't
dues.
exactly have safety protocols, but
No,
yeah.
I
He
don't
had
even
an
have.
amazing 3 years. That's what I
Yeah,
know.
he had a great 3-year career, and he invented that. Jesus, yeah, that's amazing. That is kind of amazing. So the fact that he did all that in 3 years, you kind of wish he'd lived longer, because I feel like he would have been able to put himself to more good use as opposed to mustard gas use.
He might have
But
come up with like a adverse or an anecdote for the gas.
yeah, an antidote would have been, yeah, or like maybe he could have tested safety equipment that could have been used later down the line in wars and stuff. Obviously, we had gas masks as a result of this, but I certainly think that given more time, he would have probably gone on to be remembered as one of the greatest people in the field of chemistry because he could have done more amazing things. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I'm happy to give. The inventor of cocaine and mustard gas an 80 because of the
Fair
damage
enough.
he's done. Also, just as a wrestling fan, Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig died of acute cocaine intoxication at the age of 44. So I'm giving him a higher mark because of that, because we all love Kurt Hennig. He was awesome. So
Okay. Well,
away
I
from
I
that.
I think that that's fair and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of an amazing, you talk about the knock-on effects people have, and the way people misuse their inventions. Because mustard gas could have been used for other things, but inevitably it's been used for bad. It's kind of like philosophers; they'll come up with a great idea, and then 50 years later, someone will use it as a reason to go to war or some shit.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
I feel like it could have been more positive had he been around for a bit longer. Certainly, if he'd seen into the 20th century, he would have probably seen the advent of World War One coming, as a lot of people did at the turn of the century, and maybe could have done something to stop it from a chemical point of view. So never
Perhaps. I mean, he
know.
was German though, so he would have been
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
side of the ones that used it first.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, he probably, yeah. But let's not go into alternate history. But yeah, that's a definite possibility given who the Kaiser was, really, and we know all about Kaiser Wilhelm, don't we? We covered him in another episode.
You
Um,
did.
so that's the guy who invented cocaine and mustard gas. Now it's time to move on to my fella, and it is a man. Sorry out there, all you men who think that men should be you kind of raised up to certain levels. Unfortunately, if you dominate history, you're also going to make up the vast proportion of stupid people in it. So, yeah, my man this week is our first Indian idiot. Um, yes, let me tell you,
Indian subcontinent, India?
in subcontinent. In wait, hang on.
Okay.
Have we had the Indian subcontinent? Why? Because we had what's his name who pissed off Genghis Khan, didn't
Oh,
we?
yeah, no, he was over the other
Oh, it
side
was
of the mountains there.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So, modern day India's first entry into history's greatest idiots. Let me introduce you to the life and times of Vijay Mallya, the Indian playboy fugitive. So
All right.
yeah, I want to give credit. There are a few people I cribbed it, well, a few sources I cribbed this off. Startuptalkie.com, who I'd never heard of until I did the research for this, and Wikipedia and stuff like that. I kind of got some of the information from those sources. So Vijay Mallya was born on the 18th of December 1955 in Bantwal, Mangalore, Karnataka, India, to an affluent business family as the son of former chairman of the United Breweries Group, Vital Mallya and Lalithal Ramayaya, I think that is.
Good
I'm just going to
grief.
call him Mallya. I know there's a lot of Indian names, but it's actually going to change a little bit because this guy is about as far away from kind of traditional Indian values as can humanly be.
Okay.
Mallya spent his school and college days in Kolkata. He was a student of the La Martinera Calcutta School, where he was appointed house captain of Hastings House in his final year, following which he went on to be admitted to St. Xavier's College in Calcutta, where he graduated with an honours in the Bachelor of Commerce degree in 1976. There is a strong stench of privilege hanging around this dude from the outset.
A little bit.
Um,
Seems like he's wealthy, got good education in a place where it's not so common.
Yeah, certainly. Like, obviously, with India being like a former part of the British colonial empire, the English like to take their private school education with them wherever they go. And saying that I'm house captain of Hastings House, that's about as fucking posh English as it can get, to be honest with you. Other than saying I went to Eton, that's pretty fucking posh right there. He interned in his family's businesses during his college days, which, he was probably getting money for that as well. Post graduation, however, Mallya flew to the United States and started his career as an intern in the American part of Hoechster AG. Now, I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly. They're a huge company, HOECHST, and then like capital A and G are a separate thing. I think it's like a Dutch huge Dutch company. I'm not sure, but yeah, anyway, they're big.
Okay.
Though Mallya was born to humble parents, because they came from nothing. This is a real like Donald Trump senior
Okay.
situation. This is
Okay.
like, it's like, Donald Trump's dad,
Right.
whatever his name was. He really did come from kind of nothing. And built his way up, and then his son was like, "Can I have a $7 million loan so that I can start my business career?" Like, yes, son, try not to go bankrupt 4 times.
Whoops.
Whoops, didn't work. So he was born to humble parents. He never decided to settle for a quiet life, kind of like his dad. His dad was he was a traditional, successful businessman in that he didn't like to be part of the limelight. He wanted to get on with the business of actually running the thing and like having a decent kind of home life, working a lot, but trying to build things up gradually over time. His son was not that guy. His son was kind of like the son of every rich person, particularly around the time of the 60s and the 70s when stuff starting to change in societies around the world. He had access to money and an education and a business that he could just walk into. So this guy was not humble from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And he's beginning to sound like a character from Succession. I don't know if you've seen that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
basically he's Kieran Culkin in Succession at this point. His
Yeah. He
journey
better be
started.
that cool.
He would be, yeah. I fucking love Succession. That's amazing. His journey started with United Breweries, which is already an MNC business conglomerate comprising of over 60 companies. So huge, huge company. However, as soon as he joined the business, he worked hard to grow it and managed to increase the overall turnover by around 64%, increasing the company's net worth to $11 billion by the end of
Ooh,
1998. So late
that's
90s, that's a
that's a
big company.
lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Late 90s, 11 billion. This is around about the time of the internet bubble burst. So
Yeah.
you could buy Amazon stock for like a penny.
The .com troubles.
Yeah, that was around about this time, and a lot of companies went out of business, and yet his dad and his company worth $11 billion, kind of amazing. He achieved his largest. He achieved the success of the company largely by kind of one of two things that I'll talk about now. He created a series of adverts for Kingfisher beer, which is a now world famous brand, largely because of the success of the adverts. A lot of Indian society at this time was still very kind of rigid. And he created these adverts that are probably very stereotypical 1980s beer commercials if you were to watch American television. So like a lot of partying, a lot of like hot women, a lot of like good times, people drinking beer on the beach, that sort of thing. And just lots of partying, lots of dancing, smiling people. And that was what Kingfisher did. They started doing these adverts where people were having parties in various locations, having a great time, smiling. And adverts like that were not standard back in 1998, apparently.
Well, it
So he did that.
seems like with their coming from a caste system and
Yeah, a
that
very
sort of
rigid
stuff.
caste system as well. So to be able to show people, look, you can have a good time, you can break the shackles of whatever it is that's holding you back, drink this beer. That was a key to success. And of course, it didn't hurt that he put himself in the adverts. Like every fucking advert, there he is, front and center, drinking his own beer. So
Yeah.
he's kind of like Richard Branson if Richard Branson owned beer and was like, "Hey, come to my house. Let's all party. Yay."
He's that
So
guy.
he's that guy. He's that fucking guy. I'm going to be in my own commercials. Can you act? No, but I'm paying you, so shut the fuck up. Um, the adverts themselves were kind of, the parties were low level, but he'd garnered a reputation by this point in his private life, although it wasn't really that fucking private, as a Gatsby-like party hound. Like they were lavish to extreme levels, and it's hard to tie down what is real about some of the descriptions of these parties because he kept them private, but he would like invite the press to take pictures of people who were attending, but then shut them outside so they couldn't see what was going on. There are stories of drugs, prostitutes, kind of, the usual like high-end parties that you would get where there would be naked women with food on them and just a lot
Yeah,
of
okay.
craziness. But like also like he would redecorate the places that were going to have parties, not to like theme them, but he just completely redecorate them, spend thousands upon thousands of dollars just redoing the entire room and stuff.
Damn.
Yeah, he did this so much. His behavior earned him the nickname the King of Good Times, which
That's a
is
kick-ass nickname.
that's a fucking great nickname right there. It's all, it was an appropriate moniker, as he was already living the lifestyle of a king. He himself was making millions of dollars a year just from his day job. And in fairness, he deserved it. He'd increased the revenue of the company by 64%. That's a lot of money. So he was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to have fun. And the nickname, the King of Good Times, eventually became the tagline of Kingfisher beer itself. So
That's brilliant right there.
that's really smart. He's tying himself to the brand, which normally any advertising person worth their salt will be like, don't fucking do that, because the second you make a mistake, the brand damages itself. But at the time, he was known for lavish parties, and he was a playboy in India who was all over the news, was all over TV. Why not tie your brand of beer to this image? And also, it's worth pointing out, while he was throwing lavish parties, Kingfisher beer itself was so cheap. It was the cheapest beer you could possibly imagine. And it was pretty good. Like it tasted okay. It's kind of sweet. And the adverts were everywhere. So the combination of the low price plus the hugely popular advertising meant that Kingfisher managed a 50% market share of the Indian beer market. I'll say that
Wow.
again. 50% of Indian beer drinkers, a nation with over 1 billion people in its population, drank his beer.
That's
Uh,
insane. Those are
that's
good numbers.
that's amazing. So you got cheap beer, you've got a really popular advert, you've got a famous person who is attached to the brand who you don't have to pay anything to be part of the
Right.
brand because he's already earning millions anyway. And you've cornered the market where like a vast majority of people will have a beer at some point in their lives. I know obviously alcohol is not always kind of straightforward in some parts of India, but to have 50% of the market, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So
It's like he's
that's
the
how.
original influencer.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. He was a modern day influencer in the making, certainly before social media was even a thing. This guy was doing massive things in terms of marketing himself and his brand. And as a result of that, the parent company of Kingfisher is worth $11 billion, almost entirely based on the success of this one beer. I mean, there were other investments they made that we'll get into in the time in the next few segments, but that was the success. 50% market share of beer in a
Oh, yeah.
country that is as big as India. It's like the dream for any businessman.
Yeah.
Over the years, he managed to diversify and acquired Berger Paints, Best and Compton in 1988, Mangalore Chemicals and Fertilizers in 1990, the Asian Age newspaper and the publisher of film magazines Cine Blitz, a Bollywood magazine, in 2001. And for a while, Kingfisher was the primary sponsor of Force India, a pretty successful Formula One racing team until it changed its name to Racing Point when it was bought out by a consortium. Being the main sponsor of a Formula One team, it's a lot of money. Like
Yeah, that's big time.
that is huge because pretty much after every race you have to rebuild the car, and every time and you've got two drivers, and they've got to have two cars each, so you've got to rebuild two of them each week. They're £8 million each, so that's a
Yeah.
shitload of money. Obviously they have other minor sponsors as well, but Kingfisher were the main sponsors of this team, and oh man, that's a lot of money. When unfortunately, this is where things start to turn.
Uh-oh.
Beer commercials were banned on Indian media, and Vijay saw it as a personal front. He was like, "Well, I've got 50% of the market share. Feels like a personal attack. Fuck it, I'll buy an airline and call it Kingfisher." So he was like, "It's free advertising for my beer." And I can fly anywhere. I can offer Kingfisher beer exclusively on the flights. I can let people take it off the plane. We can serve it in the airport. They can see the big Kingfisher logo on the side of these planes. We'll fly low into airports in major metropolitan cities so that they can see the Kingfisher thing. So it's essentially a flying billboard, is how he
Dude's
saw.
pretty brilliant.
Very smart. Very, very smart. And of course, when it came time to launch the thing, he made a big deal out of it. And he was on every news channel, segment after segment, saying, yes, Kingfisher Airlines, where we also serve beer, is going to be a huge success. So it's like he kept his market share by buying an airline. That's just, it just doesn't
It's
happen.
unconventional.
I know, for me, I would have bought a blimp, called it Kingfisher, and outfitted it with beer cannons on both sides and just sprayed down cheap beer from the heavens. I feel like that would have been more successful.
It would have probably done pretty well.
Just people lined up on the streets going, here it comes. Oh, there's a bird. Kingfisher Airlines was established in 2003. It was owned by the Bangalore-based United Breweries Group, obviously his parent company. The airline started commercial operations on the 9th of May 2005, right after Mallya's son Siddhartha's 18th birthday, reportedly as a birthday gift. So he bought his son a fucking airline.
Wow.
Yeah, like there was a gangster out in was it New Jersey who bought his son a hockey team, the Garbage Men or something like that, and
Oh, geez.
they bought in a bunch of like minor league players and paid them a fortune, and they were like the best of the best in the minor league, and then the NHL shut down, and they became the hottest hockey team in like the US and stuff. I can't remember where it was. I'm sure was it New Jersey or was it somewhere else? Anyway, they were called the Garbage Men. And I think the guy who bought the company, obviously he was in with the mob, eventually ended up in prison because they all do. But like he bought his son a hockey team. This fucking dude bought his son an airline.
Yeah, that's next level.
That is like, yeah, I'll see your sports franchise and a carrier in the skies.
For a minute, I thought you said back in the 80s he owned Compton, and I was like, "Wait, the city?"
Yeah, no wonder they
Bad
were rapping
investment
about it.
right then.
Yeah, that was not a good time to buy Compton.
Yeah.
Reportedly, as a birthday gift, he bought his son this airline with a fleet of 4 new Airbus A320-200s operating flights from Mumbai to Delhi, so like the 2 major metropolitan hubs in India. It started its international operations on the 3rd of September 2008, so a few years later, by connecting Bengaluru with London. So that's a big route right there.
Yeah.
That's long flights. It should also be noted, Kingfisher was a cheap airline,
So
and yeah, it's a budget. As they call them, budget airlines. It's basically he copied the formula he had with his beer and put it into airlines. And if you've ever flown with a budget airline,
mhm,
you will know that flying more than about 2 hours, it becomes incredibly uncomfortable
mhm.
because it's cheap as shit. The seats are horrible. You know, they've cut as many corners as possible. You're basically flying in one of those like portable loos with wings, essentially, because you can smell everything. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was not gonna be a great idea to fly from London to India, which is like that's like 10, 11 hour flight right there on this thing. So
It's long ways. That
it's a
is
long way in a shit airline. The offices, it would later moved the offices to Adheri in Mumbai. Its registered office was located in UB City, Bengaluru. In November 2005, during the World Economic Forums, the airline's CEO Vijay Mallya announced the airline's intention to launch an IPO to raise $200 million for the airline's expansion and possible takeovers. So he's selling this as like, oh yeah, you know, we're aiming for the sky. We're gonna buy everyone out, and we're gonna all we need is like we'll just raise $200 million, and you can all have places on the board and blah blah blah. He wanted to buy Air Sahara, which was kind of like a small airlines, but I think he wanted to expand into the Middle East and the Sahara region and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it later transpired that the airlines were already heavily in debt and going each year they made massive losses. So
Oh.
that's why, yeah, it was essentially he attempted a Ponzi scheme, only using his airline to raise the money. He's like, we're going to expand, but actually, he just needed to pay off his debts. So that's
Ah,
not.
okay.
So when
That's a
your investors find that out, they ain't going to be happy. It seems like a low running a low cost airline is a bit harder than running a low cost beer because people can't really get addicted to sitting in shit seats and smelling people's lingering farts for hours at a time.
that's why you should have
Yeah,
gone with the blimp idea that you got there.
exactly. If you just gotten my blimp idea, my man, you'd still be in business now and you wouldn't be on the run. We'll get to that in a second. In November 2011, the airline started to report its losses. The acquisition of loss-making Bangalore-based Air Deccan in 2007 made matters worse. It was believed that Vijay Mallya and his team failed to follow due diligence with the airline, and they just bought it the fuck. They were like, just give us another airline, it'll do. Um, Courtesy of NM Rothschild Consultants, who brokered the deal. So this Rothschild company basically fucked them over. So
Seems about
conspiracy,
right.
yeah, conspiracy theorists have your way with that one.
I tell you what,
What's up?
it seems pretty standard for kind of these slimy, slippery middle
Yeah.
generation rich guy businessmen like VJ and perhaps a Kushner feller. Um, where they make really shit investments that should
Yeah.
be a good idea that end up losing them money, and then they got to go be scuzzy to try to
Yeah.
cover their debts. So
It
I guess
it's
that's a
it seems to be, yeah, it definitely is a trend. I think it's called George Bush syndrome. I think it's called Arbusto, where you just drill holes in the desert and nothing comes up.
oh, that would suck.
Yeah, that's basically what he did. And guess whose money he borrowed while he was doing that? The Bin Laden family.
Oh,
Um, yeah, he had connections. So yeah, like it seems to be that the sons of successful, kind of hardworking sometimes very quiet and private businessmen like the Trumps, like the Bushes, like Vijay Mallya and Jared Kushner, as you're saying, they don't make very good businessmen, and they make very poor decisions because they're just sort of like, they're about the deal. They're not about doing the work before the deal comes in. So they won't do research. They won't look into it. They won't hire the right people. They'll just be like, you just go and buy it. You know,
Yep.
when you're already in debt, you just buy more bad debt. So he blamed the brokerage for that, but really it was the fact that he just wanted to buy stuff that was his undoing. After an initial change of name to Simply Fly Deccan, followed by Kingfisher Red, and a promotion as the domestic budget Kingfisher airline failed to stem losses, and Kingfisher suffered a loss of 10 billion rupees, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually 130 million US dollars. But that was every year for 3 consecutive years.
Oh,
so that's gonna hurt. That's like that's crazy loss central right there. That's like Twitter losses right there. Its low-cost carrier, Kingfisher Red, shut on 2011, and in 2012, employees who weren't getting salaries from the parent company went on strike. Meanwhile, while they were striking for months of unpaid salaries, Vijay Mallya was still throwing those ridiculous, lavish, elaborate parties. The kind of parties that would have made Rick James go, "Oh, fucking hell, rein it in. Just like calm down a bit. What are you doing? There's people that need paying." Yeah. So I kind of,
that's a dick move.
It is a massive dick move, isn't it? And like, he didn't change. Like, look, I understand rich people throw their money around. It's what they do. But you know, you do it quietly. If you're in a situation like that, you don't keep on inviting the press and, you know, damage your brand even more, because people are, in one news article, you've got like thousands of people on the streets demanding that you pay them their wage, and then the next article's you throwing a massive party for all your mates in like a mansion. It's bad optics, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't play well.
It doesn't play well with your average person that happens to walk around carrying a weapon. In a disclosure statement to the Bombay Stock Exchange, the BSE, he explained, "No, this is a whole thing. The company has incurred substantial losses and its net worth has been eroded. However, having regard to improvement in the economic sentiment," whatever the fuck that means, rationalization measures adopted by the company, fleet recovery, and the implementation of the debt recast package with the lenders and promoters, including conversion of debt into share capital, these interim financial statements have been prepared on the basis that the company is a going concern and that no adjustments are required to the carrying value of assets and liabilities, which is business speak for these are not the droids you are looking for.
Yeah, I was going to say, that translates to, we have no idea what the fuck we're doing. We're making shit up as we go. We may have made a bad decision and lost a bunch of money.
Yeah. It's basically like, the world's fucked and we're fucked too because we made a series of bad decisions. But, you know, the government's doing an okay job. We're not too bad, so keep giving us money. It's like, no, so please don't devalue us. No, you've admitted that it's not worth the share price, so why are you asking people not to devalue it? It was the Jedi mind trick that was never going to work. And the filing was widely covered by Indian and international print and electronic media and analysts who ripped him to shreds. They were like, this guy, you don't admit something like that. You spin it. But he admitted it, and he was like, can we still keep your money? It's like, no. Kingfisher Airline lenders later stated they considered the company viable. What the fuck? On the 15th of November 2011, the airline released poor financial results, indicating that it was drowning in high interest debt and losing money. I repeat, they said they were losing money, and yet it's still a viable investment. Jesus.
I want to know how that works. I want to get so rich that I can just lose money year after year and still throw parties.
I know. I just kind of feel like these investors should have been like, look, we want this guy out and someone who knows what they're doing in, because they have the power to do that, right? They have the majority of the shares, kick him out. But no, they didn't do that. Mallya indicated that his solution was for the government to reduce fuel and other tax prices. Good fucking luck with that, mate. You're trying to take on the government now. That's not going to work. The government was engaged in assessing whether to bail out the company and other airlines, or this is my favorite part, let market forces determine which survived. Seriously, fuck them, let them die.
Well, I mean, that's the way it's supposed to work if you want it to work right.
Isn't it capitalism? Fuck them. They've thrown money around. They're not surviving. Yet other airlines are. Stop bailing out airlines that can't run themselves properly. They're useless. Give us an alternative. It's just, it doesn't make sense. So anyway, in December 2011, for the second time in 2 months, Kingfisher's bank accounts were frozen by the Mumbai Income Tax Department for non-payment of dues. The firm owed 700 million rupees, around US $9 million, to the tax department at the time. That's just in taxes. So God knows.
That's nuts.
That's kind of crazy. That's Wesley Snipes' money. By early 2012, the airline accumulated losses of over 70 billion rupees, that's 930 million US dollars, with half of its fleet grounded and several members of its staff going on strike. They say several members. It was like dozens, possibly in the hundreds. Kingfisher's position in the top Indian airlines on the basis of market share had slipped from second to last due to the crisis. So they'd gone from, again, a huge market share down to basically nothing. Mallya was looking for buyers for the Vile Parlay Kingfisher House. Not sure if you should call it that. With the freezing of the bank accounts of the airline by the income tax department, the airline was in financial disarray. On the 20th of November 2012, Kingfisher Airlines suspended its operations after its license was suspended by the Directorate General of Civil Aviation after it failed to address the Indian regulators' concerns about its operations. On the 25th of February 2013, its international flying rights and domestic slots were scrapped by the Indian aviation authorities, and in July 2014, Kingfisher Airlines' indebtedness appeared as the country's state-owned bank's non-performing. It's the top non-performing asset after failing to repay loans of 40 billion rupees. So it's $500 million. That's a shitload of money. So they just like not paid any of that year.
Wow.
On 2nd of March 2016, after nearly 4 years of bankruptcy, the bankruptcy of Kingfisher Airlines, the consortium of 13 Indian banks, led by State Bank of India, moved the Debt Recovery Tribunal to recover its dues, which included 9,000 crores owned by its promoter Vijay Mallya. Now, 9,000 crores is like a certain, because there's so many rupees, it's like a certain increment of rupees. So it's like millions and millions adds up to crores or something like that. I think that's how it works. Anyway, it wasn't just the airlines. Vijay Mallya now owed money. However, here it comes. And I need to take a drink for this because I need my throat to be thoroughly lubricated for this next part.
Yeah, you don't want it all scratchy and painful. That's all
yeah. However, by the time the Debt Recovery Tribunal went in to find Vijay Mallya to recover the debts by seizing assets, Mallya had fled the country for the UK, despite the court proceedings by Indian banks initiated against him. 2 years later, the British courts ordered extradition of Mallya after a prolonged legal battle, and Mallya could be brought back to India if his appeal against the court order is not turned down. I'm going to get to those proceedings in a second, but it's like he saw the writing on the wall and he fucking fled. He ran for the hills and he got the hell out of there. It's a tactic that works. There are plenty of people who have fled because they, like usually war criminals though, right? You don't normally see businessmen fleeing debts. It's usually people who are like threatened by a government because they're too powerful or threatened because they're political opposition. It's not a guy who's just really bad at his job fleeing. But this guy was high profile and it was very recent. So let's get to the financial irregularities. On the 18th
Okay.
of November 2017, Mallya was arrested by the UK Metropolitan Police Extradition Unit on behalf of the Indian authorities in relation to accusations of fraud and was released on bail pending further consideration of the case. On the 9th of May 2017, the Supreme Court of India found Mallya guilty of contempt of court and summoned him to appear on the 10th of July. When he failed to appear, the Supreme Court said the contempt case would only proceed further if he was produced before the court. Interpol sent out a warrant for his arrest.
Uh-oh.
My man, you're fucked. Mallya dismissed this. This is so good. Mallya dismissed the proceedings against him, calling the situation, "It's a witch hunt." No, this is the exact opposite of a witch hunt. This is, yeah. I have done absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, I am glad that this is finally before a UK court and an impartial court at that. So we can wait and see how it plays out. Newsflash, didn't play out so well for him. Didn't go well. In the meantime, he's not allowed to leave Britain. They seize his passport, but he has said that there is no hardship for him. He said there's nothing to miss for him about India since his immediate family has all moved to England or the United States. I'm not sure if dissing your home country when they're trying to extradite you is really going to help things that much.
Might make him have a little more motivation.
Might make him greet you at the airport with weapons, to be honest.
It could be a thing.
Yeah, it's like, I'm in London. I've got Harrods on my doorstep. What more do I need? No, you don't fucking do that to your own country. On October the 20, sorry, have we got to that point? Yeah, October the 3rd, 2017, Mallya was arrested as part of money laundering case in London and was bailed and released. This is an international money laundering thing now. An appeal to extradite him from Britain was filed on charges of bank fraud, estimated at 90 billion rupees. That's 1.2 billion US dollars. Yeah, he's really in the shit now. The final hearing on extradition will be held at the Westminster's. Oh, this is an old one. Would have been held at Westminster's Magistrate Court on the 31st of July. Mallya is on bail. His current arrest on an extradition warrant in April 2017. Mallya is fighting an extradition case in the UK. He was ordered to pay £200,000 to Indian banks by the United Kingdom High Court. I'm assuming that's an interest payment.
Yeah, just a little something to keep him tided over for a minute.
Yeah, just keep him quiet, dude. This is getting annoying now. He was also asked to pay debts towards registration of Worldwide Freezing Order and of Karnataka's Debt Recovery Tribunal. Vijay Mallya has to pay dues to 13 banks, namely SBI, BOB, Corporation Bank, Federal Bank Limited, IDBI Bank, Indian Overseas Bank, J&K Bank, Punjab and Sindh Bank, PNB, State Bank of Mysore, UCO Bank, UBI, and JM Financial Assets Reconstruction Co. Fuck me.
Wow. Wow.
13 institutions want this man on their ground so that they can go after him.
Yeah,
the consortium.
It's not a good thing.
That's not going to work out so well for you. The consortium attempted to gain possession of Mallya's £20 million property on Cornwall Terrace in London, but Mallya claimed it was owned by his mother.
That's exactly like Jared Kushner.
That is exactly like Jared Kushner. That is the classic move of any like billionaire. It's I've seen it happen so many times with like rich people, even like local businessmen. They will buy, so the company will buy a car, right? They will write it off on tax because it's a business expense, and then they'll sell the car to the owner's son for £1. You know,
Right.
so it's like we pick up the check, the son gets a brand new car. It's a whole fucking thing. So that's basically what he's done with his house in London. And I'm sure like HMRC were like, are you fucking kidding? We've seen this at the lowest possible levels. What are you doing? UBS went to court in 2018 seeking to evict Mallya, his son Siddhartha, and his mother Lalith from Cornwall Terrace. So they didn't even pay fucking rent or whatever. A trial was set for, oh no, I guess it would have been mortgage, wouldn't it? The trial was set for the 20th of May, for May 2019. The trial did not go ahead since Mallya drew up a settlement with UBS, finally paid off some of the debts. According to the terms of the agreement, Mallya could remain in the property, and if the mortgage was not repaid by April 2020, UBS has a right to immediate possession. So he'd gotten away with it. Basically, he was like, "I'll pay you by this day," and they're like, "Right, if you don't, we're kicking the door in and coming through with everything."
Right.
So Mallya must also pay the interest of £820,000 accrued up to April 2019, plus any further amount accrued up to the 1st of May 2020. He was also instructed to pay legal costs of £1 million and receiver's costs of £223,863. Sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, that's he's just everywhere he goes. This guy racks up debt. In December 2018,
anti-Midas.
yeah, he's the reverse Midas. Everything he touches turns to shit. In December 2018, the court ruled that he can be extradited to India to face fraud investigation charges. In July 2019, Mallya was granted permission to appeal to London's High Court against his extradition. That was rejected. He went to the UK Supreme Court in May 2020 in the wake of losing his appeal. That was rejected, and he could be extradited in the next 28 days. However, in October 2020, the Indian government was notified that Mallya could not currently be extradited due to an unspecified confidential legal matter. Now, when was it that the people could take possession of the house if you didn't pay it? It was May 2020.
Oh,
Isn't that an amazing coincidence? So
yeah.
he avoided extradition by not paying his mortgage.
Wow. I wonder if that was
Fucking hell.
planned, or he just sucks.
That's kind of smart, actually. I mean, would you rather be foreclosed on and go and live in a smaller house, or be sent back to India where people probably want to kill you by now?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, guess I'll get a new place.
Yeah, just like move somewhere else. And Mallya was named. This is where it gets. This is the kind of the cherry on top. I don't know if Mallya's been extradited yet. I think those things take ages. Like that could take up to 2-3 years to get this guy out of the country. Mallya was named in the Panama Papers and the Paradise Papers that were leaked confidentially, documenting offshore investment by various politicians and high-profile names across the world. The Panama Papers were years ago. The Paradise Papers were this year, and he was in both of them. So this guy he's in deep with pretty much every scam that you can get your hands on in the financial world. And I want to end this with a quote from his son, who was also part of the eviction notice. His son, who was also an author, called Siddhartha Mallya, said recently, "My surname was never a burden. But when I was growing up in the UK, I was sheltered from all this negativity that comes with the name. But even today, when I'm doing my first book, you still read articles with headlines like, Vijay Mallya's son wrote a book. So I think the burden stays where it is. I wonder at what level people will stop referring to me as Vijay Mallya's son and give me respect for something that I have done for myself." So no,
Never.
the son of a wealthy thief who's no doubt used his father's name and power to get where he is today. Here is the tiniest cup of sympathy, young man.
Yeah.
I don't like. I get that it's tough when you are attached by your name to something like this, but you lived in the most lavish wealth while other people were not getting paid, including like employees. Your dad bought you a fucking airline for your 18th birthday. I don't think you now get to say, why can't people judge me on my book about mental health? Like, you've written a book about your mental health, and the majority of it was caused by the issues related to your father. So So that's the story of Vijay Mallya, who is either currently in the process of being extradited to India or has been extradited to India. I couldn't find any updates other than this quote from his son, which happened at the start of October. But yeah, what do you make of Vijay Mallya, the good time king, or the king of good time? Good Times, who is now on the run and probably been evicted from his lavish London house.
I think that it is refreshing to know that there are garbage, shitty rich boy businessmen in other countries doing garbage, shitty businessmen things. Um,
Yes, it's
and
not just the US and the UK. It's fucking everywhere.
I think just because that debt,
Mm.
God, that's so much, and it means that other people are suffering and
Oh
going
yeah,
without, so that he can have that debt where it's not just made up.
yeah.
It's hurting somebody somewhere, and I
He's crippled portions of India's economy, and there were people who were his employees were driven into destitution because he didn't pay them minimum wage. He didn't pay them at all.
right.
So that's
Whoops.
that's really scummy. And then you're throwing these parties and inviting the press. I don't know if he's doing it deliberately because he's a psychopath, like a lot of high level businessmen are, or if he's just so lacking in self awareness that he doesn't see why those two things together would be a problem.
Yeah,
You know,
he's not seeing the causation there, and I
he's
think
not.
because of that, and not knowing which way I'll take it down a little bit, but I'm gonna go all the way with a 94 on him because that's a lot
Nice.
of money and a lot of hunger and a lot of sad stuff in a place where
Yeah.
it's tough already, man.
Shit, yeah. And thank you. That's a really good score. Vijay Mallya getting really high up there in our chart, which I really need to compile one day by looking at the scores. Vijay Mallya, yeah, it's just in a sense, okay, so he hasn't killed anyone or anything like that, but he is clearly he had a way of making money, and it worked once, right? So
Right.
he was a one-trick pony that hit the big time, and he did. But a successful businessman is either able to consistently make money over a long period of time, like Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, or any of these big name businessmen you care to think of, or they are so good at coming up with great ideas they do them time and time again, like a Steve Jobs.
Right.
So you think of a great idea, you get people around you who can implement it, and then you move on to your next great idea. That's what Steve Jobs did. This
Yeah.
guy had one good idea. I'm going to make cheap beer for India. I'm going to completely grab the market. I'm going to put myself front and center, and we're going to make the brand part of my identity. That was a brilliant idea, and congratulations, Vijay Mallya. But that's pretty much it as far
Yep.
as good ideas go for him. The rest of his ideas seem to be, I'm going to rack up the kind of debt that most third world nations would be embarrassed by.
Right. Yeah.
And now he knows what's going to happen. He's going to be put in some really horrible Indian prison for the rest of his life, and he's never going to see freedom ever again.
Will he though?
So well, it really depends on how much money he has left, because he's been declared bankrupt,
Yeah.
right? So it's not like let's think. So what's his name? Colombian drug lord.
Oh,
What's his name?
how am I
Uh,
drawing a blank on him?
yeah,
I
the
mean,
guy
he
from
was the cocaine
Narcos.
guy.
Yeah, the cocaine guy. Yeah, um, yeah, he was
Pablo Escobar. Got it.
Pablo Escobar. Thank you so much. Escobar was so wealthy that when they eventually caught him, he'd already built his own prison that he could go and live in while he was serving his prison sentence, and he carried on his drug dealings from inside his own custom built prison. Very smart move,
Yeah,
in
thinking
fairness,
ahead.
but yeah, but the reason he could do that was because he surreptitiously stashed away millions of dollars buried like literally in the ground around
Yeah.
Colombia. So I don't know if Vijay Mallya has been digging lots of holes around Kolkata and Bangalore, but if anybody stumbles across like literally billions of rupees, just take it, because it's probably his. So if he does go to prison, I I I think he'll end up like Bernie Madoff. Because like Bernie
Yeah,
Madoff had a shitload of money, and the guy ended up in regular club fed.
yeah.
He was not in like some minimum security, thing. It was
Didn't go to
like quite
rehab.
tough. or rehab or something like that, or house arrest. He went to prison. And actually, in fairness to Bernie Madoff, the first thing he did when he got there was he bought up the entire prison supply of ramen noodles and sold them at twice they would have cost normally to
What a
everyone else.
dick.
What an asshole. So he became the ramen king in prison.
Oh,
So that's Vijay Mallya, who is no doubt looking at decades in prison for, ending multiple people's financial security, crippling 13 banks, and owing $1.2 billion, which is just fucking mad, really. So
yeah. Well, that was a good story, man. And
I know. I enjoyed it because you see, the thing is, I've been meaning to cover one person in particular for weeks and weeks, and I keep on finding more interesting people in the interim. I'm like, oh, I can hang on to him. I can keep him in my back pocket. When I read this story, I was like, I've got to do this guy. He's throwing lavish, like, crazy, unbelievably wealthy parties for his best friends, and people are suffering. This guy is a classic arsehole idiot.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
and again, this probably wouldn't have been a problem if he'd been surrounded by people who were better at making decisions than he was. But it seems like he was surrounded by yes men who just implemented his crazy schemes as it went.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. Well, yeah. Shoot, my guy, I think, was a way to prove that even brilliant people can do dumb shit.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think this guy is more of a just an
Just an
idiot.
arsehole.
Yeah.
He's just a rich arsehole who conned people out of their money. Like you said, your guy was somewhat noble, because he went in to do good, and he did, because cocaine had very important uses in the field of sedation and things like that. But
Mhm.
ultimately, he created things that have been misused over time. Not probably what he set out to do. He wasn't like some mad scientist going, "Ha, I'm going to rule the world," and like created stuff to do that. He just happened to create stuff that's gone on to be used for some quite terrible things. Vijay Mallya set out to get as much money as possible, and when he realized he couldn't do that, he did it in an illegal way and did it in as dodgy a way as possible, and then fled the country. So, and then he's like, "Oh, I have done nothing wrong. Why the fuck are you in London if you've done nothing wrong?
It's
Your
got nice
son's
weather.
disowning you." So,
I like
Jesus,
the darkness.
yeah, it's so crazy. So that was the story of Vijay Mallya. And what was your guy's name again?
Albert Neiman. It's like
Albert
Neiman
Neiman.
Marcus is how it's spelled. And yeah, I
Okay.
actually ran across him because I was watching Bill Nye Saves the World, and he was one of the
Oh.
mad scientists. And I was like, oh, dude, there was an inventor that made Coke. Cool.
Yeah. It wasn't just like two people in the forest with some cocoa leaves going, "Oh, wonder what happens if we grind this up. What's going to happen then?" It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, snort it now." Yeah, that's kind of mad. So I guess that's kind of a good story, really, and that good can be used for bad ultimately, probably after your death. But that's our show for this episode. I had a lot of fun doing this. I had a lot of fun researching Vijay Mallya because it's one of those things where you can see it coming. Like when
Yeah.
you hear about the airline going out of business, you're like, okay, this is the tip of the fucking iceberg, and then it snowballs from there. And I loved your guy. I didn't know that either. I didn't know the same guy that created cocaine also created mustard gas. That's amazing.
Good stuff.
So, yeah. So, thank you to everybody for listening. I would also like to point out that we do, as you can see, if you're watching the video podcast, we have a new Patreon. So, if you go to patreon.com/history's greatest idiots, you can support us with a number of tiers from £3, which is $4.50, all the way up to £100, which is $167, something like that. So, yeah. If you hang around at any of the levels for more than 3 months, you get a free gift. Go and give us a support because Lord knows the sponsors aren't rolling in thanks to some issues with our host. But please go to patreon.com/history's greatest idiots. And if you ever find yourself in a line of work where you aim to do good, but ultimately invent two terrible things, maybe try and carry on and be safer around them so you don't die at the age of 26. And if you are making a shitload of money from beer, and the company or a product, and that the advertising of that product then gets banned by your government. Don't try and do the same thing with a much more expensive franchise. It just ends in disaster. So thank you everybody so much for listening. Derek, would you like to say goodbye?
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Take care now. Bye.